Okay, for people joining this live stream, I am back to doing a few live streams based on my day job, which is developing Wolfram language. So if people are here for this is the underpinning of what makes the physics project possible, but this is not the physics project. We will actually be having a live stream about more physics project and black holes and things at 4 p.m. Eastern. Actually, Jose, if you happen to be available for that, you'd be most welcome.
I will. Okay.
Okay. Okay. So we are launching into this is a live stream. All right, let's get to work here. Okay. First item, email thread analysis. So this is. Can we see some examples of this? Is this some? I mean, this is how good is the? Okay, so is the thread graph realistic?
Look at that example linked for version 12. I think for why not? If the graph is not going to have huge information other than this graph we are creating in this example has more than just message IDs. But I think if you want to basically develop a thread graph element, it's just going to be message IDs and links. And anything else is going to be derived from that graph.
But so the message IDs, okay, so I mean, this is maybe very, very scary, but I could try doing this actually on my email.
Those are, none of those elements are implemented now. They're just proposed.
I see. So, okay, so fine. So the question is really I mean, first of all, is email a graph or a hypergraph? Can somebody explain that to me? I mean, what is a thread? So in other words, if I were to look at my email, which I'm not about to pull up right now, but
it's a tree. One single thread is a tree.
I don't believe you. I mean, in other words, I think what's okay, let me understand what a thread is. A thread is linked by the message ID of replies. Is that correct?
Yeah. And yes, but you typically reply to one email. So there is only one email that your new email is a reply to. You may have content from other emails copied, but that doesn't count. At the end, your new email has a message ID, and it's a reply to of a single message ID email.
I see. But so when you get a message which combines multiple preceding messages, those are not being part of the thread. The thread represents is a thread that just goes initial message with a message ID. And what about when people forward that message to you? I don't think this is right. How does forwarding work?
Forwarding doesn't show up in the thread graph anyways. That
creates
wrong. Well, that creates a new tree of its own. That's the beginning of a new thread. It's not a reply to of anything.
Okay, but so the threading of in like Apple Mail or something, how is the threading working there? Is somebody who else is Sean on this?
Sean and Chen, you are here.
Okay, so can somebody answer that? How does it work? I mean, in existing mailers, how does it thread?
I think it's exactly what Shadi said. Everything is chained together with actual replies to each other. If you forward something, it's going to show up as a new email in Apple Mail.
Okay. Which is not great, but I mean, at least let's at least reproduce. Okay, so you're saying, what is the analog of this for thread count? What's that analogous to? What other property is that analogous to? So if I look for, what should I be looking at? Mail. What is the where should I look to get our existing properties?
I would look at the example from documentation there.
No. I'm not asking for that. I'm asking for what are the import elements, right? for mbox. Okay,
Right.
that is
So
comparable to.
the thread graph is going to be made up with reply to message ID and message ID.
Okay, but when you have a count there, is there another count thing? Yeah, there's a message count here.
Sure. Each individual email.
And then the thread count is the number of those trees that you have from the thread graph.
Mm-hmm.
Which when you open an email client, it means how many chunks of threads, how many items do you see in that inbox that you're looking at?
So when I say, I mean, like right now, my inbox says 1,643 messages. Okay, are those if I went and counted, I have threading turned on. If I went and counted that, would that be the number of top level threads, or is that the number of messages total?
Typically, it's message count, total number of messages, individual
messages. Okay, so not the number of threads.
Right.
So for example, I mean, in principle, if we have this all running, so this is my email inbox tracker, right? So in principle, I could have another piece to my inbox tracker that gives not only my total messages, but also my total threads. Correct? And that's what you're proposing thread count does.
Yep.
Okay. What's thread email count?
In each of those threads, how many emails do you have?
I don't think that's the right name for it.
Sure.
I mean,
well, yeah, message count. We had message count as the total number of messages.
Right. And this thread duration thing, okay, so that's the thing that you had shown here, which is a timeline plot of these threads. That's an interesting plot. I've never seen that plot. I mean, I could make that plot for my email. I'd like to see what it looks like. Although it's a very weird, I mean, again, that's an association, right? So, I mean, these should end with rules or something. Thread duration rules. If it's going to be that association of list of people involved in the thread. See, but people can, I'm so confused here.
These are just, I guess, some food for thought more than actual design proposals. I guess the key element here is going to be the thread graph. And once we have the graph, all of those other things are easy to derive from the graph.
I understand, but let's understand what, I mean, I've thought about this like probably 5 times over the last 20 years of what really is the structure of an email conversation. And I don't think it's what you're describing, because I think, for example, you could be responding to a message that one model is there is a message, there's a reply, there's a reply, there's a reply. It's a linear thing, right? But somebody else could reply, a different person could reply, and they could start a separate branch in the tree, right?
Yep. If you scroll up, the trees that we had see that first one. Exactly. That's the scenario you're explaining.
Is where somebody replies to something which is at a different place in that thread.
Right.
So in a typical mailer, what is actually shown? Is a typical mailer taking the time plot? Boy, this reminds me of the physics project in a kind of bizarre way, because I mean, each one of these things, there are 2 notions of time. There's a causal time, which is the sequence, what message can only happen after some other message happened. And there is the actual wall clock time of when the message was received, right? So this tree, what do you think that a typical mailer actually displays? Does it just take everything in this tree as a big bucket of stuff and then just order them in the order of receipt? You think that? I think that's what it does.
Yeah, it's just by date.
Okay, so in other words, it is the connected component. One connected component in your graph here corresponds to one top-level thing in a standard mailer, and then these are ordered by date. Correct? Right. Okay. So now what are we missing in this picture? I mean, we're certainly missing anything where, so any forwarding is missed here. This is only replies, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so Peter on our live stream is pointing out that in the RFC for this, there is a references header, which has an in reply to. Right. So the in reply to is what is the message ID that is being kept in your threading thing. Is that correct?
Yes. You
So
can
is
also
there
get the
anything?
references. That's an element.
Okay, so what is the references? Is the references other emails that are being referenced, other message IDs, not necessarily the in reply to reference ID,
Yes.
message ID? Okay, so that we're not capturing in this tree, correct? So in other words, we're
Correct.
capturing the in reply to threading information, but we're not capturing the references threading information.
Mhm.
Okay, were we to capture the references threading information, we would have a more general graph, I assume. Is it even a graph or is it a hypergraph? Well, it depends on how we think about it. I mean, so okay, so what we're thinking about is, you know, in reply to is one. So first thing is, can we get for a given message, do we have an in reply to, which is the element here that says what is this in reply to?
Reply to message ID.
Which is where?
Scroll down. There.
Okay, all right, great. So I see reference message ID list. Okay, so we have exactly these two things.
Mhm.
Okay, so now the question is, how are we constructing a graph from this? How are we constructing the threading graph from this? Right?
Yep.
And so one graph might be, you know, we could say reply to message graph, which would be, let's see. In other words, that is, let's see, actually, the consistent way to do it would be to call it reply to, that's a list there. Why is this called list and this one not called list? Reply to message ID.
There's only one.
One message in that inbox could be a reply to another message. So you get a list corresponding to the number of emails you have.
I see. Okay, fine. Okay, but this one is for each email, there is a list of the emails to which it references, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so look, the obvious thing here will be reply to message ID graph, which would be basically the graph of the, you know, given a message, that would be the graph derived from the inbox, starting from a given message. Oh, I see. That's for the whole inbox. Yeah, okay. Although you might want it anchored to a particular message, right?
That's the sub-element syntax that we have below. So
I
either
see.
starting from a message or containing that message, we have to decide which one. We can probably just do one, or we need more syntax.
Okay, but if we say reply to message ID graph, that is at least clear what it is.
Yep.
Because then we can also say reference. Well, what that is a hypergraph, is it not? What is that? So each message has a certain set of messages that it references. By the way, which way does the directed graph go? So when it's a reply to message ID, it should be a directed graph that goes from the message that is being replied to the message that is replying. Do you agree?
I agree.
Okay.
So the root or the first email in that thread is always the root of that tree.
Fine.
Yep.
Okay, so then this, in the case where there are multiple referenced messages, presumably the messages that are being referenced should be incoming edges to the message which is doing the referencing, correct?
Yep.
So I think this is still just a graph, unless I'm missing something.
Right. Well,
because
the references are basically going to have a direction to every email that was previous in the thread. Right. It'll connect all of the messages in the thread together.
Sorry, which one? The reply to message ID?
The reply to message ID is just the one being replied to, but then the references will have the entire thread, starting with the root node, and then the reference ID of the next email, and then the next email until you're at the email that you're sending.
Or you're asking which subgraph will it be? So in other words, what I'm saying is, given a message, right, it references certain predecessor messages. I mean, this is, for those following the physics project, this is a causal graph. Exactly. Sorry I don't know who in this meeting is physics project oriented, but it's really funny. Boy, given a new hammer, one sees nails everywhere. But this is basically all right, so this is saying, given a node, which is your current message, this has incoming edges from all messages that current message references.
Yes.
Okay, so I think it's just a graph. So then
I think so too. And Sean, is it correct that it's always referencing all previous messages in that thread?
Well, email clients can pretty much do whatever they want, but that's what it should be.
But is it the case then that but it could reference other stuff? So when there's a forwarded message, does it get to be in the references list?
I can't say for certain, but I highly doubt it.
So are you saying basically that the transitive closure, that basically the reference message ID graph is merely the transitive closure of the reply to message ID graph? Let me be specific. So I mean, if I do this, if I make a path graph of something like this, right? Then I could say, here, I could make a transitive closure graph of this. What a mess, right? So in other words, what that's doing is, this is, do you see what I'm saying?
But I don't think that each node is going to touch everything else, right?
Well, but look at what this is doing. So if I say 5 here, for example, and I say vertex labels to automatic. Okay, so now I say
2 will link to 1, 3 will link to 2, and yes.
So you're saying that the reference message ID graph, so far as we know in mailers, is simply this transitive closure graph of.
So what's interesting here is I think that with the reply to message ID graph, it makes sense for the direction to be from the root down, but it seems like these are referencing back to messages, so it's almost like the arrows should be going the other way.
Maybe. I'm not certain of that. But I also, okay, can we determine for certain what's true about forwarded messages? And whether, for example, we are able to potentially detect those, given that we are parsing. I mean, we know when there's a forwarded message, yes or no?
It's only based on some hint from the subject line. There's nothing good in the spec
What about
for
quoted
forwarded
content?
messages.
Don't we know from quoted content?
Again, quoted content is, basically if the client was nice enough to put an angled bracket at the front of the line. None of these are completely reliable.
Right.
I understand that.
And the quoted content is the same for reply to or forwarded emails.
I see.
Or if you just copy paste and just manually quote that piece of text.
But I mean, look, part of what we're trying to do here is, just like there's natural language processing, there's natural email processing, so to speak. And it's not an exact science. And it would be highly useful to me, for example, to be able to see these more complicated things that involve forwarding and so on. But so, look, what we're implementing right now is these things which are essentially deterministically findable from message headers. what we might imagine in the future is something that is more heuristic. But what you're saying here, I mean, this thread, see the issue here. I kind of am slightly in the mind to say reply to thread count, making it clear that it's that's how we're defining a thread.
I like it, and maybe reply to thread graph, just to establish it there, and all these properties are from
as opposed to the message ID part of that thing.
Yes.
You know what? I do think that forwarding adds a references tag. I just tried it.
Okay, but that's highly interesting.
When I look at the thread in Thunderbird, it does show it as a part of that thread, and I'm assuming that it's using references there.
Okay.
But so that's only going to be something. So imagine the receiving message, though. It's not going to have a message with that message ID in its mbox. Only I have the thing that I forwarded from.
I see. So to tag it with a message ID, but the message ID is like a UUID. I mean, it's a unique tag, albeit one that I can't resolve if I am only the forwardee, so to speak.
Correct.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's okay. So that's an interesting thing, which we don't necessarily have support for. Is this message ID in this mbox? I mean, how would you
essentially
determine that?
do, because you can query by message ID, and if you get back
a failure object,
a failure, well, $failed because it's import.
I wish that was a failure object, and it really should be changed to be that, but that's a different discussion.
Yeah, we just don't want to break everything in the process.
I understand. That needs to be part of this code robustification project that hopefully is going to happen this summer, of handling what to do with different kinds of error conditions deep inside code and how to propagate that.
Right. I'm just sure there's a million same keys.
Of course there are. Yeah. Yes, of course there are. Okay. So then, I mean, we could put something in here that is part of the import, rather than just getting a failure there. Well, okay, that's a separate issue. Okay. If we have, so you're saying the reference messages. Well, okay, so that maybe this becomes then a referenced messages graph. Now, since you can identify a particular message to be the quotes root of that graph, I kind of think, well, you're trying to argue that these arrows should potentially go the other way, and I'm not sure I agree with that. I think it's more consistent to have them be the contributors to the message that you are currently looking at.
Yeah, I think that makes sense too.
Now, the other thing you might want is, given a message ID, what are the outgoing, I mean, in the reply to thread graph here, given a message ID, is the message that you are giving message 5 or message 1? In other words, if you want to pick out that connected component of the threading graph, well, you're proposing that this is global to the mbox, but then this is when you pick out a specific you get what I'm saying? When you're picking out a specific message ID,
right,
is it
that would
supposed
be the
to
root one
on this end?
Yes. Right, because if you picked 3, then it would just be everything subsequent to it.
Well, so still to be decided, right?
I think there's an argument that it could go the other way around. In other words, that you want to specify 5 there and get everything that contributes to 5. Right? There's both ways around are interesting. Both the consequent to 1 and the precedent to 5, so to speak. So how would we specify that? Because that relates to this message ID here, which is a a separate tag, and it's almost like source versus destination.
This isn't a serious suggestion, but I almost imagine it being negative message ID. That just doesn't make any sense, though.
It doesn't really make sense. I mean, it would be if it was a in this case that's fine, but it isn't. Unless we could have a wrapper around the message ID, but that's rather complicated as well. I mean, what we could do is something like element, comma. I don't know whether we have a syntax like this, but initial arrow blah blah blah, or final arrow blah blah blah. Do we have any precedent for that?
No,
I can't recall.
but I mean, this could be an option too.
Oh, I see. So we just
Another
say
thing
initial
that
message
was-
ID. Yeah, go ahead.
Notice that what we had proposed there was all the whole thread, including that message ID. And I'm wondering if we could just leave it at that and then do whatever graph chunking that we need to do afterwards.
I see what you're saying. So in other words, you would take the complete connected component that contains that node.
Yes.
That's a reasonable default.
Yeah,
I mean, I can imagine taking the subtree or the the feeding in tree or the, okay, let's do that initially. Let's do that.
Okay.
Just the connected component, including that message. Okay, let's see, what else do we have to figure out here? So we've got reply to thread count, reply to thread graph, referenced messages graph, or referencing messages graph. Message referencing graph. What is the right thing to say? Message referencing graph? Is that the better thing to say? And so reply to thread count is the number of connected components in the reply to thread graph, correct?
that would be the number of graphs.
Number of connected components in the, by number of graphs, you mean the number of connected pieces here?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Because this thread, this thing is in general a graph with many disconnected components, right?
Correct. Correct.
And okay, and the in that graph, the node labels are merely the message IDs.
Yes.
And to resolve that message ID, you have to separately import it from the mbox with that message ID specified. Yeah, to get the message, to get other attributes of that. How would you get, if I wanted to get the from information?
With the same sub element specification. So you would say body from to for that message ID.
Okay, so I say from and then the message ID. So in other words, I've got a piece of code. I mean, we probably want some helper functions, at least in the function repository, and possibly more, at least in the function repository, that will, for example, get you one of these graphs with a label, with a vertex label that is who the message is from, for example.
Mm-hmm. Right. Notice that in that example, we had the piece of the message that was new.
Yeah, well, that's
as a
cool.
tooltip.
As a tooltip,
Well,
but I think, go ahead.
Why wouldn't there be another sub-element? Say you pick message ID, and then the next thing that you can give is a list of fields that would be included.
Okay, that's fine. If that will work as a sub-element.
What if we don't have, for message ID all, we get the whole graph with
Right,
that
that's
property.
the default.
So you're saying that
Not the default, sorry.
lm, comma all. So for example, if I say reply to thread graph all, comma, and then I say from and something else, you're saying that that will then label the elements in the thread graph with the from.
Yep.
Okay. Sounds pretty reasonable to me. Okay, what have we not figured out here? This duration thing is a little weird.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. Is that a quantity or is that an interval? Or a list of dates?
Well, it's a quantity. It's a quantity. It's a duration thing. It's a little weird.
Or a list of dates?
It's a duration thing.
I would assume these are intervals.
Well, for the duration, I was thinking it's the actual quantity. It says it lasted 3 hours.
Hmm.
Is that something one cares about? I mean,
it's again easy. Rather, it should be easy to compute that once you have the graph.
yeah, I wouldn't bother with that property right
I mean,
now.
something like
Sure.
how many conversations were wrapped up in under a day. You know,
Sure,
what
but that's a piece of email analysis that one should be able to do from the thread graphs.
Sure.
By extracting, the dates on the thread graphs.
Yeah.
Now, we had a number of points on the live stream here. Okay, let's see. Someone's asking for sentiment analysis of these. You can absolutely do that, but I don't think it should be built into this. You can just use classify with sentiment analysis. Okay. So comments. Yeah. So Salim or Hugh is pointing out, emails are a causal network. Yes, it's really an amusing fact. I mean, as I say, now that we have that hammer, everything is a nail. Okay, wait a minute. Oh my gosh, that's a horrifying point. If you forwarded the same email 2 times to 2 different people, it would essentially make a graph, a branch pair, an entanglement. That's an interesting question. Does this graph, so in this graph, every node is a message ID. In the references graph, is there just a single way? So there could be different labelings. There could be different tags of the edges saying how the reference happened. Do you see what I'm saying? It could be the reply to reference, or it could be a forwarded reference.
Mm-hmm.
So arguably, we should tag the edges.
So, but is it a forwarded reference if it's not a reply to reference? I'm not sure that we have a reliable way of saying this thing was forwarded.
Well, fair enough, but at least we can say it was a reply to.
That we can say,
and anything else could be a separately tagged edge that says this is simply a reference, not a reply to link. It's a reference link.
By the way, the linking, when you do this, make sure we reference transitive closure, because that's clearly going to be relevant in understanding these.
Sure.
The other thing that's interesting about this is that even on your machine, it's not necessarily going to be in the same inbox, because when you forward the message, unless you are one of the recipients, it's going to show up in your sent folder, not your inbox.
Fine. So these message IDs may point off into who knows where, and we may not be able to retrieve this additional information.
And when it's a forward, that is almost always the case.
But again, I think, for instance, Gmail shows them in the same thread in your inbox, even if it's forwarded.
Well, Gmail kind of combines your sent and your inbox together.
Yeah.
Okay, there's some other points here. Brian is pointing out, really need to support connecting to Microsoft Outlook. What is the story with that?
Is that for import or mail receiver function again?
No, I assume that's for Mail Connect.
Mail Connect, and right.
Which is a different thing from this.
Yeah.
This is you've got the mbox and you are gulping the whole thing down as an import, right? So I don't know. I think there's a different team working on Mail Connect, right?
Correct.
Do you know the status of getting Mail Connect?
At the same time, like when you're in Outlook, you've already connected to some server. You should just IMAP connect to that server. I don't know what connecting to Outlook means.
Well, maybe there's something weird about its IMAP protocol. That's a different issue. I think let's find out. But that's Devin. Maybe you can go find that out from Fahim or whoever is involved in that actual Mail Connect thing.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. According to the spec, forwarding should only set the resent fields, but doesn't specify any behavior for the referencing field. Okay, says visibly twitching. Interesting. I mean, the problem with email is there are all these standards, but people don't follow them.
Right.
And I think maybe what we should do, okay, this resent field, which I don't know about.
See it in the email I just forwarded.
Okay, but
I don't see
that's
any of
okay.
them.
But okay. So people are pointing out we should look at the RFCs 2822 and 5226, and we should do that. I have a very bad feeling that it's one of these cases where there is a standard and nobody follows it.
This is one of those cases. I am quite familiar with the standard.
And they just don't. People just don't follow it.
Right.
Great. Okay, so a question from Brian. Should there be a property that's a count of the number of attachments? I think we have that, don't we? Do we not have a count of the number of attachments? Has attachments. Attachment list. Actually, it's a good suggestion. Attachment count is a reasonable thing to have.
If you scroll down, we don't have it.
We don't
I think
appear
it
to have
has
it.
attachments.
Yeah, but that's
really
a binary.
Yeah, it should have just been message count, honestly.
Attachment count.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, let's
there is
attachment
you
count.
just got to the table that said attachment related elements. If you scroll just a bit more. Okay, so it's basically
names.
Right, length of those.
Right, so it might be nice to have an attachment count. Easy enough to add.
Sure.
Okay, Feasibly is saying when resent message fields are used, the resent from and resent date fields must be sent. The resent message ID should be sent. Okay, so the basic question is resent as opposed to resent, which will be spelt exactly the same way. The resent is the way that according to the RFCs, forwarding should be done. Is that what you believe to be the case?
Yes. It's just I haven't seen it in practice once yet.
Great. Let's see if anybody follows the standard. All right. Well, so I think what we've got here doesn't seem foolish. I mean, maybe we should have something which, if we, which insists on this resent thing, but the problem is everybody's going to be frustrated because it's not going to be what they actually see in real life. Okay, Steve is pointing out, if you want Outlook 365, not really Outlook anymore, nobody runs their own Outlook server if they can avoid it, and they can do IMAP or SMTP. Right. Oh gosh, Outlook with some servers use a proprietary X400 protocol. Wow. What if it isn't an attachment, but a Google Drive link-based attachment? We now have Google Drive. I mean, that's an interesting thing. How do those get represented? Are they URIs? When it points to a Google Drive entry, do you understand what I'm asking? I mean, is Google Drive does it refer to? I mean, because we now have does external storage support Google Drive? We support Google Drive in the cloud, right? But is it supported by the external storage mechanism? Anybody know? Wrong set of people in this meeting. Can we find out the answer to that? Because we must have support for this now because we have it for cloud files. Okay, I think we're done with this email section, I'm hoping. Let me save this in the right place here. Devin, should I?
So I just checked on the Drive thing, and it's just basically appending a URL to the end of the message body.
Okay, so is that something we can decode, or is that something that
maybe we can look for docs.google.com in the message body. But this technically isn't an attachment, and our elements are actually referring to fields that have a content disposition, which these do not. So they are not attachments.
Okay, I understand. So this is something which is part of natural email understanding, basically. It's a thing in the email. which is a separate, an interesting thing, which actually we should have as a topic at the summer school this year. Natural email understanding. I made myself a note. It's something that we've danced around a bunch of times, and I know we've done a bunch of projects on this. But okay, let's try and nail a couple of other things here. Okay, do we have any more we needed to talk about right now for email? It sounds like we have a path forward on this. Yes.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Do you need us for the rest of the meeting?
Don't think so. Thank you
All
very
right.
much. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. See ya. Bye. Okay.
So these are two functions that we started working on a few months ago, and now they are ready, so we can repeat them.
Take a look. Okay, so where do you want me to go in DocuTools?
Yes, they're featureized pages. So these are for 12.2.
Okay. FoldWhile. Let me make this bigger.
So the main thing here was these additional arguments to control how many additional or more or less.
Right. So reminding ourselves what this does. So FoldWhile, is that really the best first example? Oh boy.
We can change it. It's kind of difficult to have something.
It's a difficult thing because it actually has to, this is the life of procedural programming. It is not symbolic what the thing returns. That is, what this is doing is saying, if I did this with an ordinary fold, right, what would I do here? I would say ordinary fold, and then I would say here, just fold list of this, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, would be that. And what you're doing is that you say, I want to terminate the fold early.
Right.
Now, I think it'd be useful to people to see this thing here, fold list and then fold while after that, because I think that makes it less obscure what's going on.
Yeah. So we have the same examples in FoldWhile list, but yeah, it's probably worth repeating them here.
Which same examples?
In the page of FoldWhile list.
No, I understand that point. I'm just saying, that to see what fold list does without the termination condition would seem useful to me. But,
I see fold. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I think you have to say fold list because otherwise nobody can see what's going on. Because if you just say fold, it's going to go down to this and it's going to be completely obscure.
Yeah. I understand.
Okay, but so what you're talking about is what happens after the termination condition. In other words, can I terminate on 1, or is there a way to terminate at 1?
Exactly. Yes. So that's these additional arguments that FoldWhile has and FoldWhile list. We took them from nest while.
Okay, so first it's the function, the list, the test. Wait a minute.
So we have like fold. We have the natural version separating the seed from the second arguments, and then the case in which we merge them.
I see. Okay, fine. Okay, and then the 4 argument case has a test. Then there's a 5th argument, horrifying, that, oh boy, that's how far back to look for the test.
Exactly, because the test may be looking for comparisons between one element and the previous one, like equal.
Yes, I understand. Okay, returns the result after applying F an extra n times after test fails. Okay, so you're saying if I say -1 here, if I say fold while,
it should be in 12.2 too as well.
Okay.
Jose, did we put it back in system context?
Good question.
I can't remember.
But you think it's in the prototype build, or you don't think it's in the prototype build?
If it's not, it's in the internal context.
It is.
Okay.
Okay. So now what you're saying is fold while list of this thing here, and then it needs an extra argument for integer q, Okay, that's that. So now if I say, now I'm going to say I want just one, I'm only going to look at one element at a time, and I say -1. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's nice. And if I say 18 here, what's it going to do? Okay, so it's going to go up to a max. It's an up to of 18,
It's an up
basically.
to.
And if I say -12 here, okay, seems fine. And if I say, is there a way to go? Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, that's fine. So -4 or something would just give me that. Okay, looks fine to me. Anything else to discuss with FoldWhile?
No, I don't think so. So there is the same page effectively for FoldWhile list.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, let's
Good.
move on. Okay, echo timing and quiet echo.
Yes, so these are two functions that Ian has written, and they follow echo. And here we have examples of, these are screenshots for a notebook and for a terminal.
Okay, by the way, I had a complaint about echo in parallel kernels. Does anybody know the answer to that issue?
We discussed at some point the change to a Unicode Guillemette. And I think, Ian, you changed that, right?
Yes. So now
Okay.
it's maybe not as big of an issue visually.
Okay, all right, probably. I mean, except it gives the kernel name, doesn't it? And does it do it? Did you check it in a parallel environment?
Yeah, so it has the kernel name and then
Symbols should support some kind of monitoring. We agree that's a bigger story and it isn't finished. That's going to be a separate discussion. In fact, people, I think next week we have the giant progress monitoring summit meeting, which I guess we'll live stream. So we're talking about the progress in progress, so to speak, monitoring. Okay, let's go back here. So this is echo, fine. Oh, this is echo with a Guillemette. Are we pretty confident that Guillemettes will be supported in all these environments, that we're not going to end up with some crazy, percent, 1/2 weirdo thing here? Has the world become modern enough that every reasonable environment, PowerShells and all this kind of thing, support Unicode?
I don't know. We can ask perhaps Konstantin or Itai.
Fine. I think we should make sure that we understand. I think, look, to my mind, one of the things we should probably have is a compatibility list, which I don't think we have actually, on our giant compatibility page, right? So if you go to wherever it is, if you go to this giant page, the compatibility and connectivity page, right? We list many, many things, but I don't think we've ever thought to list shells that we're compatible with. And that might be a good thing to inventory, because that way, right, that way we're going to know whether this is going to fail. Make sense?
Yep.
I think that's a QA issue. Okay, so what you're showing me is the formatting here. Why does the label go after the Guillemette? I guess that's right.
Yes, so that's what we do for echo, to distinguish different echoes.
Okay, and that's really a Unicode character? That clock is a Unicode character?
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay, cool. Okay, so now echo timing. So echo timing is echoing. I see, fine. Yeah, so echo timing is something that you can put wrapping around some operation. Can I run it here?
in prototype, yeah.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is if I say...
You can also look at the ref page for more.
Okay, 1, 2, pause 3, pause 1, 5. Yeah, I mean, the more interesting case is where I have something where I just insert echo timing as as a pure insertion there, if I'm making sense, not a like we do with echo so often.
Right. Scroll down to need examples.
This is, by the way, messed up, the formatting of this page, but yeah.
Right. So this is an example you came up with last time we discussed.
What is it? I mean, oh, I see. It's a thing where you're getting, well, there's all kinds of formatting issues here.
Right. We haven't added this to the style sheets for DocuTools yet until we get approval.
Okay.
Yes.
But so you're saying, in this case here, you're saying that this is going to give the sub-echo sub-timings here. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Is there any value in having some kind of mouse over or click thing here? Probably not. I don't know what it could do.
Right.
But I mean, just to be clear, that this would be echo timing. If I'm not mistaken, this would work, right?
Yes.
I can just insert echo timing, and probably the example should look like that, just because it's a convenient way to show
Okay.
how you can do it. Okay, looks good. All right, any more? Okay, what is quiet echo?
So that's a new thing which we can use to eliminate the echo results. So you just wrap it
Oh, I
around
see.
the whole
That's an anti-echo.
Exactly. Yes.
So that's a quiet. That is a. But now, what kind of echoes will it quiet? Does it quiet all echoes, or does it
Yes.
quiet only echoes?
Every echo function, echo timing.
Okay, Ethan is complaining that echo was implemented wrong. I don't think so. I think that is what you are asking for, is echo function. You're saying that echo, you're complaining that the operator form of echo, that it needs, okay, right now, echo, the issue is there an operator form of echo that allows you to give the label? And the answer is, echo right now has an expa followed by
Label.
But the operator form here is, if you just give a single thing, it's that. I mean, there's a certain argument that we should have an echo label, which does have the feature that you can give a label here and that its operator form is like that. I mean, the alternative, obviously, is to say operator applied echo, but that's kind of grotesque. I mean, this would work, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Or you could do echo function and specify the label, comma, identity.
That's ugly. I think we should consider this echo label thing, because I agree that this would be super useful. I mean, I'd use it all the time to, if I have multiple echoes, to be able to specify which one is which. What do you guys think about that? I mean,
I like
think
it.
about it.
I do use echo with labels a lot because
Right.
I put many in my code.
So I think we should let's look at that. Okay, and it's equivalent to operator applied of echo with a label. So let's see.
We should look at the option for echo timing.
Sorry, what option for echo timing?
As a method option.
Which?
Oh,
to have a label? What are you saying?
no,
To
this is the
specify.
separate. Sorry, this is the separation we had a few days ago.
And I think in repeated timing, we should do that again and have a method option that says what kind of timing it is.
Right. So we were considering, perhaps this is a discussion for LCC, the possibility of having a timing function rather than method, in the same way that we have a distance function.
Oh, that's a good idea. It's a good idea. That's a good idea. Okay, we have an LCC meeting coming right up, in fact, and we need to switch to that other stream here. let me just see. This question about levels of echo. Okay, let's just talk about quiet echo, and then we'll go to the other meeting.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, this is basically sensible. There are questions about exactly whether it should have second arguments and things. I mean, it's clearly going to be used mostly as like this quiet echo of a thing, and I don't think we can. Yeah, I mean, we might want a second argument saying what it quiets, but I think that's a luxury. All right, listen, we have to go. I think some of you are also involved in the LCC meeting. Some of you are not. Right, for folks on the live stream, we are switching over to a different stream for our language completeness and consistency meeting. And I don't know what its agenda is. I'm about to find out. We are missing date select, which we will do next time. Okay, great. Thanks, guys. So I hope to see people on the live stream in our other session here. Great. See you all soon.